Hello everyone and welcome back. This is Aretha. In this video, I'd like to talk about the power of pre-decisions and share a few examples of decisions I like to make early to make my life a little bit easier. By the time we are tired, overwhelmed, or under pressure, our decision-making ability declines. When we feel like we are going through the thick of things, our brain just wants immediate relief, and so it prioritizes decisions in the short term. The problem with that is that these short term decisions tend to go counter to what we want in the long run. So, how do we break the cycle of making decisions under pressure and getting ourselves further away from the things we really want? This is where planning ahead and making decisions in advance can be a secret weapon. See, when you're planning things in advance, you are operating from your prefrontal cortex. And this is the part of your brain that does the higher level thinking, considers the long term, and really thinks about what is beneficial for you overall. This is the part of you that's very rational and logical. But when you feel under pressure, the emotional part of you kicks in and it just wants you to soothe yourself right now without any consideration for the future. The other thing that happens when you're under pressure is that you have typically also run out of your willpower. So, this is a combination of operating from your most emotional part and not having any willpower to fight it. And obviously, your decisions are not going to be optimal under these circumstances. So, what if instead you remove the option to make decisions under duress because you've already seen these situations coming and you've already decided what you will do when they occur? So let's talk about a few examples where I use pre-decisions to make my life a little bit smoother. So the first thing I decide is the one or two things that I absolutely need to get done today. I know it sounds really simple, but try it if you haven't used it yet. I like to decide in advance that I will feel successful today if I do X and Y, or just X. But giving myself clear parameters for when I'm allowed to feel like my day has gone well makes me more likely to savor when I accomplish that one thing. But if I don't clearly specify what will be considered success at the end of the day, then I spend my day chasing the next item on a to do list, and I don't have clarity on what item is more important and what item matters the most. So then I end up doing a lot of busy work all day just because I want to check off as many boxes as possible. But at the end of the day, I don't feel accomplished because the main thing I needed to do was never clearly identified and probably never got worked on. So decide in advance what you need to do today to consider it a success. And don't make it a ridiculously long list. Make it the one or two most important things that absolutely need to happen today to move forward with all your projects. Another thing I like to decide early is when my next checkpoint will be on major personal projects. So, for example, I started writing a blog a few months ago and I started a YouTube channel. And I knew that starting these two new creative projects would require that I put in quite a bit of work in the beginning before I start seeing any results. I knew that there would be a learning curve and that it would take several months before I could really gauge whether I was successful or not, and whether I enjoy doing these things or not. So, what I decided from the onset is that I would not evaluate my progress until it had been 6 months of me consistently posting on YouTube and on my blog. And then there are more practical things that I like to decide ahead of time and rehearse so that I'm prepared when the situations occur. The first one is decide how to answer uncomfortable questions. And you probably know what those are for you. What are the questions that keep popping up every so often that people ask you and constantly catch you off guard? So maybe you have family members that keep asking you when you will get married or when you will have kids. If you know that these questions keep popping up and you want to have a good answer to them, take the time to think through what you would like to say in response. There's nothing worse than being asked a question, freezing in the moment, and then later thinking of the perfect answer you should have said right on the spot. Well, you can avoid that if you anticipate those questions, come up with your perfect answer, and the next time someone asks you an uncomfortable and usually inappropriate question, you have your answer locked and loaded, ready to go. Very similar to that is decide how you will decline something you don't want to do. So if you find yourself saying yes all the time because you don't feel comfortable saying no, Then come up with a typical answer that you will give in every instance so that as soon as the question comes up, you have a way to say no that you have thought about that comes off very considerate but is clear and unequivocal, and tell someone that you don't want to do something. That's a really hard one because we are all wired to say yes and we hate to be disappointing other people. But if you craft your answer ahead of time, you can make sure that it's considerate, you can make sure that it covers all the points you want it to cover, and you can make sure that it is clear and final. As someone with Crohn's disease, there are a lot of foods that I just cannot have. And sometimes when you go to an event where someone made a homemade dish and they made it with all their heart and they really want you to try it, you have to decline. And when I was first diagnosed, I would go on this long explanation that I have Crohn's and these are the things I can eat, these are the things I cannot, and I would make a whole list almost to justify the fact that I just cannot have the one thing that they're offering me. And then I realized that that was too much explanation and I didn't have to talk so much just to say no. And then I came up with a very short way to say, thank you so much for offering. I see that you put a lot of effort into this. Unfortunately, this is not something I can have. Simple answer, but on the spot, I always felt like I had to give them a very long-winded explanation so as to not hurt their feelings. But most people, if you give them a clear answer, will not dig any further. Another thing I like to decide in advance is how long I will take to make a decision. You know, when you have to decide something and it's a big decision and you feel like you need more time and you keep delaying it, well, studies show that if you give yourself more time, you are not necessarily going to make a fundamentally different or better decision. But basically, there's no benefit in delaying a decision. If anything, it just occupies your mind longer and takes up your mental bandwidth. So if it's a big decision, give yourself till the end of the week to decide. Chances are you already know what you want to do, but you are afraid to voice it. And if after a few days you still feel that way, then that's probably the decision you want to make. Go ahead and make it. Another thing I like to decide in advance is how to prioritize my self-care. So if I've had a terrible week and I've been sleeping poorly, eating poorly, and skipping my workouts, I have already decided that my priority will be to work on sleep. Because I know that when I sleep better, then my other habits tend to fall into place a little bit easier. I have already decided in advance that I don't want to work out harder if I'm not sleeping enough. If I have a week where everything is falling apart, my number one priority is to work on sleep. Once I get sleep under control, then I can look at my nutrition and I can look at my exercising habits. When my brain is refreshed, I can make better decisions that affect other parts of my life. Other things you can decide in advance: what you will have for lunch. What are your top 3 outfits when you have a big presentation at work? If you have a busy day tomorrow, decide in advance what you will take with you to the office, what needs to be packed, and what you're gonna wear. Like, there are a lot of micro ways to implement this early decision making that make going through the thick of it a little bit easier because you don't have to use up your mental bandwidth to make decisions on the spot. When I decide things in advance, my brain has a chance to digest the information and accept it. And then when it comes time to perform, the path of least resistance is to do what we already decided we were going to do. I don't need to think about it. I don't need to weigh different options. I don't need to convince myself. It's already been decided. The easiest thing to do is to just follow through. And when I'm exhausted, overwhelmed, and under pressure, I really appreciate not having to make a decision. Now, does that work every single time? No. Every once in a while, I'll find a way to finagle my way out of doing what I set out to do. But most of the time, it does work. And if I manage to stick to my early decisions 80% of the time, then I consider that a huge success. So now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments below what decisions you will make ahead of time to make your life easier. And as always, remember to give me a thumbs up on this video and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next video.